Recording started. Zoom out button.
Well, good morning, dear students, 12D and 12F together. So, as promised, we will now take up the text of Deep Water, having given you the introduction and the meanings to the lessons. Now we can take up the text. So I have read out the introductory part about the author. So now we can start the text immediately. Remember that I'll focus and explain only those aspects which need explanation. Otherwise, the text is simple. You will understand the meanings as easily. There is no problem. We will focus on the psychological analysis of fear in this first part. That is the most important thing. The emotions that he describes, and the series of emotions that he experiences, and ultimately we will understand his experience. Okay, so we start. You see, just a minute, please. In fact, I didn't mark the time before starting. Yes, by my watch, it's 8:05. So roughly, we can continue for about 25 minutes. Okay, so here we go. It had happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. I had decided to learn to swim. There was a pool at YMCA in Yakima that offered exactly the opportunity. The Yakima River was treacherous. Mother continually warned against it and kept fresh in mind the details of each drowning in the river. But the YMCA pool was safe. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, and while it was 9 feet deep at the other, the drop was gradual. So at the other end, it was about 9 feet deep, but then the descent, the drop was gradual. It was gentle. यानी वो जो ढलान थी वो 9 फीट गहरा तो ज़रूर था, लेकिन एकदम से ढलान नहीं आती थी, बल्कि धीरे धीरे वो गहराई बढ़ती थी. I got a pair. sorry, I got a. sorry. I got a pair of water wings and went to the pool. I hated to walk naked into it and show my skinny legs. But I subdued my pride and did it. Now there is some information about the Yakima River. You see, the Yakima River is a tributary of the Columbia River in eastern Washington, USA. The state is named after the indigenous Yakima people. Now we continue with the text. From the beginning, however, I had an aversion to water when I was in it. See how he developed the fear of water. This started when I was 3 or 4 years old, and father took me to the beach in California. He and I stood together in the surf. I hung on to him, yet the waves knocked me down and swept over me. देखिए, ये जो इतनी ज़बरदस्त वेव्स थी कि ये जो 3 4 साल का बच्चा था, इसको उन्होंने अपने गिरा दिया और उनके ऊपर से बह के पानी निकल गया. तो आप सोचिए, देखिए इसकी क्या फीलिंग थी. आई वॉज बेरीड इन वाटर. माई ब्रेथ वॉज गॉन. I was frightened. Father laughed, but there was terror in my eyes. Sorry, there was terror in my heart at the overpowering force of the waves. Obviously, the child was frightened. The father didn't take it seriously. For him, it was fun, but the child was frightened. This is how we usually develop the fear of something. And if nothing is done um, to eradicate this fear, to overcome this fear, then, when we grow up, it becomes a problem for us. Okay, let's continue with the text. Remember that the author has developed the fear of water. My introduction to the YMCA swimming pool, revived unpleasant memories and stirred childish fear. तो जाहिर है जब वो पूल पे गया तो वहाँ पे उसको ये सब बातें याद आईं. But in a while, I gathered confidence. I paddled with my new water wings, watching the other boys and trying to learn by aping them. So he was trying to learn by copying them. I did this 2 or 3 times on different days and was beginning to feel at ease in the water when the misadventure happened. So, he gradually started gathering confidence, but then unfortunately, an incident happened. A misadventure, a mishap happened. Now he talks about the mishap. I went to the pool when no one was, um, when no one else was there. The place was quiet, the water was still, and the tiled bottom was as white and clean as a bathtub. I was timid about going in alone, so I sat on the side of the pool to wait for others. Okay, then you see, um, right. I had not been there long when in came a big bruiser of a boy, probably 18 years old. ब्रूजर, जैसा मैंने आपको लिखा है, a kind of a bully, मतलब बहुत ही ताकतवर मजबूत किस्म का एक लड़का वहाँ पे आया. He had thick hair on his chest. He was a beautiful physical specimen with legs and arms that showed rippling muscles. उसके muscles उभरे हुए थे. तो देखिए, he yelled, "Hi, skinny, how would you like to be dugged?" तो जैसे कहते नहीं है कि हाँ पतलू, अगर तुम्हें फेंक दिया जाए तो कैसा लगेगा. With that, he picked me and tossed me into the deep end. इनको deep end की तरफ उठा के पानी में फेंक दिया. I landed in a sitting position, swallowed water, and went at once to the bottom. I was frightened, but not yet frightened out of my wits. देखिए, पानी में जब फेंका गया तो ये बैठे हुए पानी पे गिरे और फौरन बॉटम की तरफ इन्होंने जाना शुरू कर दिया. तो इन्हें डर तो ज़रूर लगा, बट जैसा कि ये कह रहे हैं, बट नॉट येट फ्राइटेंड आउट ऑफ माई विट्स, लेकिन कि इतना अभी डरा नहीं था कि होश व हवास उड़ने आए. इस फेस को याद रखिएगा, आउट ऑफ माई विट्स, उसको मैंने एक्सप्लेन भी किया है. तो ही वॉज फ्राइटेंड बट नॉट फ्राइटेंड आउट ऑफ हिज विट्स. दैट मीन्स ही वॉज एबल टू थिंक, मतलब ये इनके मुताबिक. लेकिन असलियत में हम देखेंगे कि ये फ्राइटेंड थे, क्योंकि अभी उसका रीज़न सामने आएगा. देखिए, ऑन द वे डाउन आई प्लान्ड, इन्होंने एक प्लान बनाया. व्हेन माई फीट हिट द बॉटम आई वुड मेक अ बिग जंप, come to the surface, lie flat on it and paddle to the edge of the pool. देखिए, अब ये देखना चाहिए कि ये प्लान सेंसिबल है कि नहीं। इन्होंने प्लान बनाया कि साहब जैसे ही ये बॉटम टच करेंगे तो ऊपर की तरफ एक जंप मारेंगे, और इन्होंने सोचा कि ये पानी की सरफेस पे आ जाएंगे और फिर फ्लैट, ही वुड लाई फ्लैट एंड पैडल, यानी स्विम टू द एज ऑफ द पूल, और इस तरह ये बाहर आ जाएंगे। लेकिन ये प्लान सिली था, बिकॉज ना 9 फीट गहराई में जाने के बाद क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि कोई ऐसा जंप मारे कि वो उसकी फीट वाटर की सरफेस तक आ जाए? नहीं। बल्कि होता यह है कि जब इतना नीचे जाता है आदमी तो उसके लिए सांस लेना तक मुश्किल हो जाता है। अब देखिए इन पे क्या गुजरी। इट सीम्ड अ लॉन्ग वे डाउन, दोज 9 feet were more like 90, and before I touched the bottom my lungs were ready to burst. Yes, ये जो कह रहे हैं कि those 9 feet felt like 90 feet, तो ऐसा होता है कि जब हम आ, परेशानी में होते हैं तो 2 मिनट भी हमको 20 मिनट के बराबर लगते हैं, वक्त गुजरता ही नहीं। ये सांस ले नहीं पा रहे थे, इन्हें लगा कि ये जल्दी से 9 फीट नीचे पहुंच जाएंगे, लेकिन बहुत इन्हें महसूस हुआ जैसे बहुत देर लगी हो, ये 90 फीट नीचे आ गए हों। तो and before he touched the bottom his lungs were ready to burst. That means he was unable to breathe. अब देखिए, but when my feet hit the bottom I summoned all my strength and made what I thought was a great spring upwards. According to the plan, he tried to jump. He made a huge effort to jump, and I imagined I would bob to the surface like a cork. Instead, I came up slowly. Actually, the jump made no difference. He came with the pressure of the water. I opened my eyes and saw nothing but water. देखिए ये एनालिसिस है फियर की। ये डरे हुए थे और डरी हुई कंडीशन में उल्टे सीधे डिसीजंस इन्होंने ले रहे थे। तो अब इन्होंने आंखें खोल के देखा तो इन्हें पानी पानी नजर आया। वाटर दैट हैड अ dirty yellow tinge to it. I grew panicky. अब देखिए क्या होता है कि फियर जब हमारे ऊपर हावी होता है, when we are frightened, we usually lose wits, we make insensible decisions, and when we don't succeed we grew panicky. तब हमारे ऊपर पैनिक आ जाता है। पैनिक का इफेक्ट क्या होता है? I reached up as if to grab a rope and my hands clutched only at water. I was suffocating. I tried to yell, but um, no sound came out. Then my eyes and nose came out of the water, but not my mouth. So, out of panic, he tried to grab something like a rope, but obviously there was no rope. His hands clutched only at water. He was choking. He was trying to shout. He was trying to shriek, but then no sound was coming out. Obviously, if you are underwater and if you try to shriek, you won't be able to produce any sound, or even if you produce a sound, no one will be able to hear it. So in other words, when we grow panicky, we do silly things. Ultimately, you know his nose and his eyes came out, but not his mouth. So I flailed at the surface of the water, swallowed, and choked. I tried to bring my legs up, but they hung as dead weights. Yes, ऐसा भी होता है जब पानी में नीचे जाते हैं तो थकान हो जाती है। तो और कुछ फियर का भी हिस्सा था, यानी the legs were frozen, paralyzed and rigid. A great force was pulling me under. I screamed, but only the water heard me. I had started down the long journey back to the bottom of the pool. तो जाहिर है कि ऊपर तो ये आए मगर कुछ नहीं कर सके और फिर दोबारा से इन्होंने नीचे जाना शुरू कर दिया. So look, I struck at the water as I went down, expending all my strength as one in a nightmare fights an irresistible force. So he struck at the water. He was fighting with the water just as a person fights with, say, an irresistible, unopposable force in a nightmare, in a horrible dream. जैसे कि हम कोई बहुत ही खौफनाक ख्वाब देखें, उसमें देखें कि हम किसी ऐसी ताकत से लड़ रहे हैं, कोई भूत या जिन, तो सारी ताकत अपनी लगा देते हैं. इसी तरह से I had lost all my breath. My lungs ached. My head throbbed. I was getting dizzy. But I remembered the strategy. I would spring from the bottom of the pool and come like a cork to the surface. I would lie flat on the water, strike out with my arms and thrash with my legs. Then I would get to the edge of the pool and be safe. तो फिर वही स्ट्रेटजी, क्योंकि और कुछ सोच ही नहीं पा रहे थे ये. I went down, down endlessly. I opened my eyes. Nothing but water with a yellow glow. Dark water that one could not see through. And then sheer, stark terror seized me, gripped him. He was controlled by terror. Now see, terror that knows no understanding, terror that knows no control, terror that no one can understand who has not experienced it. अब ये fear की analysis है. You know, when we are terrified, we lose all understanding. When we are terrified, we lose all control, all self-control. And remember, no one can understand our fear. At least the one who has not experienced it can never understand fear. अगर आपने ये fear experience नहीं किया तो आप दूसरे का fear नहीं समझ सकते. याद करें वो experience जब वो 3-4 साल का था और waves ने उसको गिरा दिया और उसके ऊपर से बह गई. तो father जो थे उसके, वो he was laughing because he had not experienced that fear. Child को वो fear महसूस हुआ था और वही fear उसके साथ था. So I was shrieking underwater. I was paralyzed underwater. ये देखिए, ये टेरर का एक इफेक्ट होता है. इट मेक्स अस पैनिकी, इट मेक्स अस पैरालाइज्ड. हम कुछ चाहते हुए भी कुछ नहीं कर सकते. हाथ पांव ठंडे पड़ जाते हैं हमारे. खौफ से हम इतने डरे हुए होते हैं. स्टिफ, रिजिड विथ फियर. ये देखिए, हम रिजिड हो जाते हैं फियर से. इवन द स्क्रीम्स इन माई थ्रोट वर फ्रोजन. ओनली माई हार्ट and the pounding in my head said that I was still alive. So ये जो हमारी wits होती हैं, ये जो हमारी power होती है, power to think and take decision, this power gets paralyzed. And then in the midst of the terror came a touch of reason. इससे हमें पता चलता है कि पैरालाइज तो हम हो जाते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी हमें थोड़ा बहुत ये शऊर रहता है कि हम कोई सेंसिबल कदम उठा सकें. और अगर हमने कोई सेंसिबल कदम उठा लिया तो फिर तो हम कामयाब हो जाते हैं. अदरवाइज पैनिक हमारे ऊपर आ जाता है, जैसा कि ऑथर के ऊपर हुआ. तो आई मस्ट रिमेंबर टू जंप व्हेन आई हिट द बॉटम. एट लास्ट आई फेल्ट द टाइल्स अंडर मी. माई टोज रीच्ड आउट एज इफ टू ग्रैब देम. I jumped with everything I had, but the jump made no difference. The water was still around me. I looked for ropes, ladders, water wings. You know, in panic he was looking for all these things. Nothing but water. A mass of yellow water held me. Stark terror took an even deeper hold of me, like a great charge of electricity. Now he was even more frightened. Fear continues to grow. I shook and trembled with fear. My arms wouldn't move. My legs wouldn't move. I tried to call for help, to call for mother. देखिए, because he was just a child, he just a kid. So he even tried to call for mother. Nothing happened, obviously, because there was nobody around. And then, strangely, there was light. I was coming out of the awful yellow water. At least my eyes were. My nose was almost out too. Then I started down a third time. I sucked for air and got water. The yellowish light was going up. Then all effort ceased. देखिए, अब ये तीसरी बार जो नीचे गए हैं तो फिर ये बेहोश होने लगे. इन्होंने सोचा कि अब ये मरने वाले हैं. तो then all effort ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp. Limp मतलब lifeless. And a blackness swept over my brain. It wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice. To be drowsy. To go to sleep. No need to jump. Too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently. To float along in space. Tender arms around me. Tender arms like mothers. Now I must go to sleep. So he felt unconscious. He fell unconscious. अब ये याद रखिएगा कि यहाँ पे इन्हें एक तरह से फियर का एक्सपीरियंस हुआ और मौत का भी एक्सपीरियंस हुआ. तो एक तरह से मरने का जो एक्सपीरियंस है, यानी बेहोश होने को इन्होंने मरना समझा, तो वो जो मरने का एक्सपीरियंस है उसमें कोई एलिमेंट ऑफ फियर नहीं है. लेकिन हम ये जैसा कि लेसन के लास्ट में देखेंगे, देयर इज फियर इन द फियर ऑफ डेथ. एक हमें ये होता है कि हाँ हम मर जाएंगे, बहुत खौफ होता है, लेकिन मरने में कोई फियर की बात नहीं है. Well, I'll have to stop it here.